Now this morning, as I look at our projects table, there was one thing I had spoken to Vlad over the weekend, and he thought it would be a good idea. There's a little bad spot on this BIMOTA emblem here. Looks like they had a drop of clear. And what he thought we should do, and he actually mentioned it when he was here, and I had forgotten it, is I can backmask everything except this carbon, sand it, give it some 1000 grit, mask off everything, and put a coat of clear on that. Now that should be relatively easy to do. Since we have a rainy day, we're really working through what the next couple days is supposed to be rainy. So as I always explain to everybody, the first step of any working on any part, painting, repainting, is you got to get the part clean. In this case, I only need to get the part I'm going to be working on. Get it degreased as much as possible. Step one, simple green. This will get 90% of it off. And once we're done, of course, we'll run a buffing wheel back over this, so that really shouldn't be a problem. But you really don't want to go, the thing you don't want to do is take, and I always say it, is sandpaper over something that's been waxed, because it drives the grease and the silicone and fingerprints right down on a molecular level, right down into the paint. So once I get that clean, I'll get the prep ball, we'll prep ball it up and get ready to backmask it. And boy, every time I use this, the prep ball, whatever you want to call this product is certainly, it does the job, but nowhere near as good as the old Sickens M600 we had used for many, many years. And this is always, I just always try to do this 2 or 3 times, where with the Sickens, you did it once and it was done. But again, as opposed to not doing it all, this is way better for sure. Now, because it's a rainy day, and I always try to plan my work around the weather that I can't control, it's always a problem. It's a problem no matter where you live or what you do. You always have to deal with the weather unless you have a spray booth. Well, we don't have a spray booth, but it never, I always say the saying I like is it slows you down, but it never stops you. And I want to put the vinyl edge in the blue vinyl tape, then backmask everything with tinfoil, pretty much the same as we did on that side of the repair. And I'm probably not going to get this painted today, but the idea would be, and it's a good way to deal with any of this, is always try to use up a rainy day on the parts of the job. Like today, if we're waiting for the sprocket, and then we're going to do that job on the 650, wheel, tire, sprocket, all in one shot. And because my time is not unlimited like some people would be if they were in a different personal situation, I have limited time, but I try to use it really efficiently. And the truth is, no matter what you do for a living or what you do for to satisfy your passion, doing it efficiently, and I've learned little efficiency lessons from a lot of people that have a lot of different passions, and they all are valuable to me. And then there's the other end of that equation. There's people that really have unlimited time and unlimited money and get nothing done. So I like to think I'm on the lucky side of that equation. Anyway, I want to thank Walt Prey again. Years and years ago, the late Walt Prey shared this little tip of the tinfoil with us, and boy, have we used that to our advantage. Here's the little imperfection. I'm going to try to sand some more around that with 1000 grit. See if I can get some of that out. And I'm not sure what they did here. They put the clear on after the Zeus fitting was in place. I don't know why they did that. But there's a crack in this, a little bit of a crack here. We'll try to address that and fill that in. And then there's also a spot up here where the carbon is just not perfect, and I have a way I can deal with that. What I've found you can do that is just get a drafting pen with India ink and put one dot there. Kind of makes that go away. And all of these things are just little things to hide the little imperfections. But the first thing is to get the 1000 grit paper, some soapy water, and get this sanded with 1000 grit. And this is 1000 grit. And 1000 grit seems to be the way when you want to laminate on an extra coat of clear or put finish over something that's got a nice solid finish underneath it. It gives enough of a scuff and yet it doesn't chew into it and make a mess where you start having loose ends pop up and everything. And we would not want to sand down into this. We get this water out of here. And hit the carbon fiber. That wouldn't be that good. So we'll spend a few minutes and just detail this out with the 1000 grit. Get it perfectly flat. And then the problem is it's raining out there, so we're really not going to be, unless it stops, and the odds are good it's not because they predicted rain for the whole day. We'll basically put this aside to live to fight another day. But we'll get as many of the things prepped as we can. And I also thought if the time, we'll see how the weather's going to be, I could get I have the two side panels, the BENELLI two side fairings are ready for a little sand out before we put the next coat of primer or start the green depending on how many flaws show through in the primer. So we're going to have a nice busy day, that's for sure. Now ultimately when I'm done with this, I don't want any shiny spots. I want everything to be flat. Once everything is flat, this will be pretty much prepped. And this one I don't want to sand through. I got to be real careful with these decals because some of them are not available anymore. Alright, so that's ready. Actually all we need now is weather. The weather is going to be the defining factor here today. And it's still raining pretty good. There's no point in even thinking we're going to get any painting done today, but we can get all the parts prepped, so if we do get a sunny day later in the week, you can see the water dripping off the edge of the table. And that's trying to use time efficiently. One of the things I always try to do. Now this is one of the little parts off of the 650 Ninja. And if you look at it real close, this is a part that when you buy the bike, it's flat black. And then I don't remember how long ago, a couple months ago or so, I had just had the bike apart and I painted it shiny black. Well, I never really buffed it out, but here's the point I'm trying to make. You don't have to buff anything out a couple days after you paint it. The longer you wait, the better it is. When paint's a couple of years old, it buffs out a lot easier. But I just wanted to show this real quick, not make a big deal out of it. Because pretend this is a part of a bike, a factory bike. The thing you have to worry about with a bike that comes from the factory that you didn't paint, they don't put a lot of clear on it. This is 2000 grit, the good old Indasa sandpaper. And you don't really, this part of it is kind of cut and dry. And you can see the orange peel on there. And what happens with orange peel, sometimes as time goes by, it gets worse and worse and worse, up to a point. Now, the one thing that would be really a lot of work is you just take a buffing wheel and try buffing over that paint, and you'll never really get it to be nice. You'll never get it anywhere near what it would be as if you block sand it out. 2500, 2000, or 3000, any of the real ultra fine grits. And they don't remove a lot of material, so you kind of stack the deck in your favor that it wouldn't be that high risk thing. But you don't want to go on corners, you don't want to go on edges. You just like to get as much of the flat spot, and especially when you're holding a buffing wheel, you don't want to be on those corners and edges. Now the 2000 grit, it does take a little time to sand. A way of, and I thought I'd show this, a way of minimizing how much time you spend sanding. See, I've gone all in that direction. Now I'm going 90 degrees against it. Well, the theory is, and I've heard this from other people that do this and do it well, you make little, like waffle cakes on a microscopic level. And those micro waffles are easier to get out. I don't know that this is totally true because I've done it both ways. It's still a lot of work. It's just a lot of work. But so sanding this out would be the first part of anything. Number one would be if you are so inclined, it's the middle of the winter and you're not going to go riding. Some of the people that don't ride during the winter, just let the part sit up by a heating vent for the longer the better. In the old days of acrylic lacquer and butyrate dope for finishing, you'd let it typically sit a month before you'd even try to sand it. But modern paints are a lot better. in terms of how being user friendly and everything. And I just wanted to show this because everybody's got something they'd like to make just a little bit shinier. And if you see this, and I'm doing it without camera cuts, it's in real time. So now you can see what we have up here. This is the part. And this is the part when it's, I call it block sanding. It's really not block sanding. We're not using a block. We're flat sanding it. So a part that's flat sanded 2000 and a part that's just has the spray, still got the dust in it and everything. And by the way, what was funny is Luciano was looking at the bike this weekend, the weekend it just passed, and says, you forgot to buff that part out. And he was right. The roughest of the 4CR products, 80/20, you notice I even high-tech thing, I put that on there in case the label, which obviously it does get pushed away, because people do borrow this stuff. They borrow the basket and then bring it back looking like this, mentioning no name. So the trick is put a little bit on the pad. When it gets dry, spray it with a little Windex, and we're going to just attack this now and see how long it's going to take to bring that up. Usually 5 or 10 minutes. It's not a real tremendous job, but it'll look 1,000 times better than the part we didn't do, the orange peel part. So the trick is, once you smear a little bit of this compound on, here's not a great trick, but one of the tricks I've used. I always like to use my knee, because here's an example. If you use any kind of a buffer and you're holding the part by hand, the whole thing is moving. You're not doing this, it's going like this at some point in time. You minimize the efficiency, but if you can buck the part up, and okay, these are obviously work pants, if you can buck it up on something solid. Now, I found doing this doesn't do much at all. There's a speed at which it seems to cut efficiently, and I'm guessing that's about it right there. The rough cut is only going to bring up the shine up to a certain point. Then we're going to have to use the finer cut and then the ultra fine cut, the 3 products to bring this up to where I hope it's going to be really, that Luciano will be impressed anyway. But this is the point I like to do. I like to take an old motorcycle and on a rainy day like today, detail one part out at a time, and eventually the whole bike is detailed. In fact, some of those bikes out in the garage, there isn't much left to polish on them. And you don't have to do it all in one day. You can do a little bit every day. You can do the bolt heads another day, or a wheel, or whatever. And these little buffers from, just to mention them, these little buffers from Harbor Freight, wonderful. Now, partway through this, I like to take a microfiber and I can always do this. And I can look down real close. I'm working under fluorescent light, and I can see sanding scratches. When I see sanding scratches, I know, pretty simple what's going on here. I haven't buffed enough. When I see no scratches, then I go to the finer compound. And it's a little time consuming, but you know what? The reality, it's a rainy day. And I wonder how many rainy days I've used or freezing cold days, or days it's too hot. Or days I'm just not in the mood to ride for whatever reason, that I've spent doing this. The nice thing about buffing parts out, it costs almost no money just for the compound and one of these $15 buffers. But the end result is, when you put your bike somewhere in a crowd, it really stands out in a crowd. Now, little by little by little, that shine is coming up. I'm trying to do this in real time, of course, but there's still just a few scratches, but I think you can see how much shinier that part is than the part that we haven't done yet. So, and I wouldn't do the whole part. I do one part, get this the way I want it, do this part, and there are 2 of these, one on each side of the bike. But that's coming up nice so far. I had a second product, and this is a little finer grit. It's medium cut, 80/21. And what I like to use this on is a soft pad. A blue pad or a white pad, not a black pad. And if I run this on a very low speed, a 2 or a 3, in fact I'll put it on a 3. And it's a much finer cut material. It takes a lot longer to cut, but the shine will be a little bit nicer. Again, a clean microfiber. And I'll go back and detail out all the corners and edges by hand. But it obviously doesn't take long, and you've got something really, really nice to add to the motorcycle. And once these parts are all put back on, even Luciano will be impressed. Well, it's a small upgrade, a small little improvement. Of course, it's personal. It's in the eye of the beholder. If you like flat black and you think that looks all mean and tough, I personally like shiny, and I've gone out of my way to, for all the bikes, to make things as shiny as possible. Well, it's a small detail improvement, but like a lot of the little detail improvements we've made, I think improvements anyway, the little tail huggers, the exhaust system, and then none of these things are really difficult or expensive to do. They just take time and effort. And titanium, when it's polished, it's just so nice, and it only requires maybe once every 2 months to just run a little bit of compound over it again to get the oxidation off. I think it adds a nice touch. And the other little things like polishing up the shin plates, polishing up some of the bolt covers. There's the part we just did today with the little gold anodized bolt on it. And every one of them, it's just a lot of details. And the good news is all we've done is use a rainy day that we really couldn't have done any yard work even today. I call these little projects rainy day projects. Now the next time we get to have a work session, we have Vlad's these two BENELLI parts. They've been drying a couple extra days. I really want to detail wet sand them out. I'll save that for another session. And so on a rainy day we got a few little details done, and I think every time you add one little detail to a bike, and no matter what bike it is, and I just love doing it to all the bikes. And I understand some people like riding rat rods and rusty bikes and bikes that they don't do any maintenance on, or bikes they, I don't know. I know what motivates me, and I don't know what motivates them, so I guess we're even. But anyway, just one more thing. I hope this video gives you some ideas of stuff you can do for your bike and how to do it realistically, inexpensively. But believe me, it always takes effort. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.